Welcome, and thank you again for joining us for supporting your child's literacy development in the adolescent years. And this is a special presentation from the National Center on Improving Literacy. Dr. Beth McLean is our presenter. She has been with us now. This is her third time out, so she's an old pro. We had part one was the preschool literacy and supporting your child's preschool literacy development. Then part two was for the elementary years. And today we're looking at the adolescent years. If you wouldn't mind, drop in the chat box if you were here for part one or part two or both. We'd like to know how many of these you've attended. Dr. McLean has some information that will be redundant from one of the first two presentations. She also has a lot of great new stuff to talk with us about for adolescents. So Dr. McLean is an associate teaching professor for the Goodling Institute for Research in Family Literacy at Penn State. She's a consultant with the National Center on Improving Literacy. And so without further ado, Dr. McLean, thank you for being here. We appreciate it so much.
Hi, thank you very much, and good morning to everyone. Yes, this is the third, as Sharon said, that we've been doing to support children's literacy development. So I want to say the NCIL's mission is to increase access to and use of evidence-based approaches to screen, identify, and teach pre-K to grade 12 students with literacy-related disabilities, including dyslexia. So I just wanted to kind of put a plug in for there. They have a lot of great resources on their website. Okay, so our learning objective today are pretty much, they follow the same from the previous two presentations. It's to talk about evidence-based practices to support children's literacy development and to provide ideas for parents to support their children's language and literacy growth by reading together, helping children understand what is read, engaging in conversations, to help, increase vocabulary and to support fluency and reading comprehension skills. Okay, so adolescence, that's a whole kind of new, not new, it's kind of an area which is often the expectation is, once kids get through to third grade, then they've already had their foundation for language and literacy development. But in fact, it continues, and the learning for language and literacy skills continues through middle school and into adolescence. Because what is required of the older children is to engage in more deep learning in the subject areas, and it requires more complex literacy skills and how to use the language and literacy skills as tools for comprehending and representing subject area content. So it's just learning how to use the foundation skills you have. And as we know, literacy is the ability to read, to write, to speak, to listen, to think. And in this day and age, adolescents need to learn to communicate clearly in and out of school, and particularly in school. So we're going to talk today about a bunch of tips and strategies for reading with your child, engaging in conversations, which is continues from the preschool, the elementary is these conversations, providing a literacy-rich environment, supporting writing behaviors, being a media mentor, and motivating your child to read, because this can be kind of a sticky area. Okay, so reading with your child. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about this, pretty much just one slide, because it just basically is a follow-through, like I said, from the other trainings that we did. You're building background knowledge of topics if you're reading with your child, and it can continue into adolescence. You think, well, independent learning, they want to be on their own, do what they want. But in fact, I think they enjoy, talking about their readings and talking about ideas and issues so that you're reading about. It also helps them model of what good reading sounds like if you read out loud. And it also, you can learn words and how language works, because complex sentences, complex ideas are more likely to be in the readings that you do with your child. And if they don't understand it, you can talk about it and when you're reading with them. And so talking about it moves us into the engaging in conversations. Now, this is a really important area because, beyond our whole idea of, supporting literacy development, engaging in conversations helps you to stay engaged with your adolescents. So you want to talk about schools and their friends or current events. And this can happen anytime. It could happen at meal times. when traveling in the car, back and forth to sports events or sports practices or music or whatever, or before bed, have that special time, that quiet time to talk to them. Ask questions about what the child is reading and listen to the answers. Contribute and have a conversation about it. Discuss information that is read together. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this, about reading together, which we did a minute ago, but also in terms of conversations and supporting their reading. And talk about what the author's message might be, such as if issues that are raised. And we talk a lot about supporting literacy development, but issues and conversations can occur from what you watch on TV, from the news that you hear and everything. So you can continue the conversations beyond just reading behaviors, but it's also listening and what you hear, what they've, what they might have seen on their phone in the, in the social media world that we have. So it's really important. We're going to, at the end of this section, at the end of each section, there's going to be resources for you to have, and one will provide you about developing conversations with your child. Okay, so I'm going to shift the next slide. We're going to watch a video for about 2.5 minutes. So I have to stop sharing and go to my video. Okay, and I'm going to share again, talking to myself. Okay, so you should be able to, no, I don't think you're seeing what I'm seeing. Okay, Sharon, let me know if you can't see what's going on.
Enlarge the screen to full screen.
Okie doke. Thank you for that reminder.
I actually was thinking about this a lot. I like the day of launch, but I really think for social media, we ever been in a meeting like this?
Well, then let's go over the start of the day. So we're gonna kick off around 8 a.m.
I was thinking we could try that new place for lunch.
Chances are your high schooler can do better.
More public schools than ever are adopting mandatory uniform policies for students.
Being able to participate effectively in a group discussion is a skill that doesn't get a lot of attention, but we all know it's important. So what does a good discussion look like? Let's watch.
My neighbor and like one of my friends, they had to wear school uniforms, and a lot of people really didn't like it. And picking what you want to wear it's kind of like expressing yourself.
Well, I mean, I wore uniforms from kindergarten to 8th grade. And personally, it like kind of helped me out in the morning.
They listen actively to each other. This means they're paying attention even when they're not the one talking.
So I guess it kind of helped me because I thought I was like equal with everybody else.
They ask questions.
Did it surprise you that the studies show that the uniforms didn't make a difference?
I was actually kind of surprised because I thought that one of the main reasons people got picked on was like what they wore, and saying that it's not that big of a difference, that surprised me.
They build on each other's thinking.
Like you said, I didn't have to choose how to look good or whatever. But like you said, it removes each student's individuality.
But don't forget, kids are still developing these skills. Some kids will struggle a bit.
The other kind of area where students struggle in general is analysis. And so it shows in their speaking when they're explaining their opinion and explaining why they believe in what they believe.
How can you help?
Really trying to push them to explain and bring in evidence and explain how that evidence pushed them into believing that.
The guy said that uniforms don't really make that big of a difference in like academics. So I guess it'd just be better not to have uniforms.
So what to look for in a discussion with your high schooler? Are they listening actively, asking and answering questions, and building on each other's thinking? If they are, then chances are they're doing better than these guys.
If we had this meeting again, because the morning of, if we build up the momentum, then on the morning of.
All right. Let me stop that.
Stop share too.
Yep. Okay. All right. Let me get back to PowerPoint. Okay. So yes, the video kind of gave ideas about discussing and helping them become active listeners, which is really important. So, okay, so a little bit more about engaging in, conversations when you're reading with your child or ask questions about what they're reading so you can identify the key ideas and sentences from the book that support those ideas. Figure out help, when you're engaging in conversations, it can figure out the meaning of unfamiliar words. And then it also support them if the reading gets difficult. And what I think it's important if you're reading with your child is to read what they're reading, even if you don't read together out loud, but read the same book they're reading so that you have an idea of what the key ideas are and the sentences and the words. You can point out, as you're reading it alone, find words that you think might be difficult and ask them about them. So it becomes like a book club with you and your child. When you are able to talk about the book, you can do it every night after reading time. You can do it when they're finished the book, but it allows, you to have a familiarity with what they're reading. And I find actually young adult books super interesting and kind of, fun to read. All right. Are there any questions at all? How are we doing? Okay. So now we're going to see another video. It's kind of like a bunch of videos in the beginning, but can your child understand what they read? So it's important to know and be able to decipher whether they're able to read. So let me stop sharing again. And all right.
Did you know that
Oops, sorry,
70%
I'm
of high school
starting it
students need
before I
some
mean
form of reading
to.
help and remediation?
Oh, okay. I'm getting used to this. All right, so screen 2. There we go. I'm going to start it again. I'll go back to the beginning. Okay.
Did you know that 70% of high school students need some form of reading help and remediation? You might be surprised as to why.
One common misconception about reading is that someone who can read the words in a text also deeply understands those words.
After growing up poor in a mostly African American neighborhood of Cincinnati, the young adults have reached their early 20s. One by one, their brains were scanned by an MRI.
Does your child really understand what she reads? Kids who don't really understand what they've read might hesitate and have trouble answering questions about it.
What is these couple of paragraphs about?
I'm not sure.
But kids who do understand can show you they do. They can tell you the key ideas in a text and point to the sentences in that text that support those ideas.
I feel like the main idea is talking about how lead has influenced the crime rates and skills in like school and how you perform. It talks about it right here after they introduce the lead and how it affected the people that grew up in Cincinnati.
And as the vocabulary gets harder, they can figure out the meaning of unfamiliar words.
It says, I've gotten off to a disastrous start. It means like the start is horribly wrong.
Because texts are more complex, even good readers won't understand everything they read. That's okay. But they need good strategies for sticking with it to try to understand it. First, kids can reread the text.
If you're not sure, what can you do?
Go back and reread.
They can ask questions.
The main question I had was where the majority of the lead exposure was coming from.
And they can make notes and annotations. So how do you make sure your child is understanding what he reads?
Parents can encourage their students to take a challenging piece of text, paragraph by paragraph.
So take a few minutes and make sure your high schooler is really understanding when they read.
What are you reading about?
I'm reading about how butterflies fly and navigate.
What's the main idea?
Well, the main idea is how when it's clear and sunny, they navigate via the sun. And when it's a cloudy day, they follow the magnetic poles of the earth.
So does your child understand what they read? If they can identify key ideas and sentences that support those ideas, figure out the meaning of unfamiliar vocabulary, and stick with it when they don't understand, chances are they do.
Okay, stop sharing. There we go. All right, so let me get back. All right. Okay. Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, it kind of gives an idea because there are plenty of kids who, and I'm sure everybody's guilty of it. If your mind's distracted, you read a whole paragraph. I've done that with reading books. I read a whole paragraph and I have absolutely no idea what I've read because I'm distracted or because it's just too much to comprehend. So it's important to be able to, know, oops, sorry. All right. What's going on. Oh, all right, there we go. Oh my goodness, I'm not having a good day today, I must say. Okay, so we continue with our engaging in conversations, and it's, just kind of knowing, ask the questions that allow your child to think more deeply about what they're reading. And these are questions that require more than the yes, no answer, and often have your child explain his or her thinking. And this is, kind of what we talked about with open-ended questions versus closed questions, because closed questions are yes, no, which is what in the preschool age, we don't want to have the closed questions. We want to have the more open-ended questions so that they can think about what is being read and kind of better explain to you for comprehension what is being read as well. So example of such question is, what is the author really trying to say? Why do you think the author used that phrase? Why do you think that? Any of those kinds of questions where they might have to compare and contrast points of view, from their own. You want them to, express their opinion based on what the material they read. So it's more to get the complex thinking happening so that they can comprehend and start being able to, and this will in a sense affect their writing, as we will talk about, but it's a lot of getting that complex thinking going on. So here's some examples of questions for prompting deeper thinking. What question would you ask if, when you're looking at the story and if you're reading it, what was the problem with? Do you think? How would you? What would happen if in the story? I mean, you can, and I talked about this before, is like if you have a story that they're reading and you come to the end, well, what would happen if you did such and such? I know there are books out there of where there are different endings in that you come to a point, you say, if you want to see this, then you go to this part or go to that part. And they're very different kind of books, but it allows very complex and very varied endings. And I'm sorry, I can't remember what they are, but it's kind of an idea to kind of get the conversations going because you're talking about different endings to a story. Okay. So here are a couple of resources that are helpful. Parenting tips for teaching older kids conversation skills, how to increase higher order thinking, one's in English and Spanish, and the links when you get the PowerPoint, the links should take you to those resources. Are there any questions at this point?
One said Encyclopedia Brown stories were those type of books.
Oh, that's exactly right. And that they're very fun to read because it just takes you different directions, for sure. Thank you for telling me. I couldn't remember. Okay, so the next on our list is offering a literacy-rich environment in your home. And this is a place that encourages reading and writing, such as listening to stories, reading together, talking about ideas. And when you have a literacy environment, you want to be able to show the child that reading is familiar. So you have a variety of reading materials at the home, and it could be like magazines and books and instruction manuals. It could be anything. You build off your child's interests, which is really important because, as we're going to talk about later, is motivation to read, is that if nothing is interesting, your teenager will never pick it up or decide to read. And you let your child choose what he wants to read. And this can be, you look at the child's interests and where they are. And you can do it from like sports teams, hobbies, popular culture, issues facing teens. Let the child choose what they want, because that's more likely to motivate them to read. Here are some types of reading material, such as books. This can be fiction or informational, which is like nonfiction book, or magazines, newspapers, comics, articles, blogs, because all the reading material, even though we have, you know, we want them visually see the literacy rich environment, but it's also, there's a lot on the internet and things like that as well. And you want to be, you know, and there's lots of places to find the reading material, which is the public libraries, bookstores, thrift stores, dollar stores, yard sales. You know, have your friends talk to you, have your child's friends talk to each other and exchange books, which is, you know, so then they're talking about it and what they've read online. But again, be mindful of letting your child choose the books they want. And it doesn't have to be fiction, which is the stereotypical idea, but it can be like cartoons, and the whole graphic novels are fine. You know, whatever encourages them to read is a positive. We want them, you know, want the interest in reading, regardless of whether, you know, it's something that we're used to or not. And here's a couple of resources, you know, 10 ways to encourage your high schooler to read, you know, how to help a teenager choose a book. And this is, you know, important because that's the hard part, is finding what interests your child. Any questions here? Okay.
I was just going to comment that
yes,
my daughter and I read together. She's a preteen, but we read together a lot, and it's kind of opened my interests up, which is funny because her reading interests are different than mine. And I've gotten into more of the fantasy genre that I never thought I would be interested in.
Yeah.
But you're right. The young adult books are so interesting. And they're well done, and they're, you know, they grab your attention. And they often have very rich characters. We've also gotten into some, you know, some nonfiction. Just there are some really, really good biographers out there. You know, for adult books that I've read, I've discovered some really good ones, and you know, they're fascinating and good storytellers.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And I too agree that the young adult books, I think they're written with the intention of really capturing the interest of the student or the adolescent who's reading, because they, you know, they get bored easily, and you need to be able to capture those ideas. And I think there's so much out there to read. And what's interesting is some authors, like I think it's Laura Hildebrand who wrote Unbroken. There's an adult version, which is, you know, rough to read, but she also wrote a young adolescent version, which doesn't have as much, is, you know, it's still with the whole story and the, you know, what the whole history of it all, because it's a historical fiction. And I gave that to my daughter, and she read it, and it's, you know, so she didn't have to tackle the more adult book, but she got the same sort of things, and we could then talk about it. But it's good to look for, maybe there are versions of the books that are both young adult and adult books, and I think that can be very interesting. But I'm serious, there are some really good young adult books. I mean, the Maze Runner books are interesting for teenagers, things like that. Okay. So it's the modeling reading and writing behaviors, and this is going to primarily focus, I'm going to bit on the writing, but it's also the modeling the reading, because you want your child to see that you yourself do a lot of reading and writing regularly. And it's easy to, you know, in this whole day and age with computers and social media, that people are doing less reading, or it's different, and perhaps less writing, but it's a very different than it was. You know, the day and age of writing letters is kind of fading away, which is unfortunate, because there was so much richness in the letters that have been kept from different authors and different people. But, you know, reading the newspaper, reading online, using an e-reader, listening to an audiobook, all of these things you can do together with your child, but it's reading and writing together. And, you know, and as I said earlier, the partner reading or participating in a book club together can really create an interest in you guys in it, and you can talk together. You know, there's blogging, mobile storytelling are another ways to engage in writing, but it shows that reading and writing are related together. And that's kind of what it is, read and write together. You show how reading, you know, that it's related to other activities like planning a trip, adopting a pet, you know, when you write what you need, writing lists, grocery shopping, there's so much that needs to be done with writing and the reading and writing go together. All right. So I'm going to focus now a little bit on writing, because I think this is an area that is not often isn't focused enough on, because writing is something that we need throughout our life. And we assume that, well, if you can read well or you can comprehend, the writing is a pretty, you're able to do that, but it's not. Reading and writing are complementary skills, but they're also very different in the development and what they do, but they don't necessarily go hand in hand. You could be a very good reader and comprehend and everything, but have a lot of difficulty in writing. But the more you read, the more you can get a better sense of what good sentence structure is and everything. So, but writing is a predictor of academic success, and it's a basic requirement for engaging in life and in our global economy. So that's what's important to remember. And a lot of jobs in future don't require a lot of writing, but there are, and there's different kinds of writing. I mean, you can write the technical writing, which is, knowing how to do something, versus writing stories and writing other more lyrical, or whatever the word is, things for that. So here are a couple of tips. So have your child write and write some more. And my father used to, say, just write, you'll get better. And I was like, yeah, whatever, Dad. But part of what my job is to write, and I do a lot of writing. And from high school to now, it is, vastly different, because I've been doing a lot of writing. So it's practice to become a better writer, to understand how to tighten your writing and how to, word correct words. So that's what's really important. So when you're talking with your teenager, you have them write for different audiences, because that's also an important skill. Maybe you write a letter to a relative. Even if that's an email, you're still writing something. Write a silly story for a sibling, but it's different audiences, so that they understand that different people are going to be reading it from a different point of view. Engage in forms of writing that are of interest to the teen. So you don't want to just say, write that, do that high school, do that, assignment that you have to do, but show that there are ways of writing that are fun and that are more interesting. If they're into poetry, that's a great writing. Journal writing is a great way for them to express themselves. As it says in the third bullet, encourage deeper thinking about questions, about hobbies. And these can be private. They don't have to be something to share, but it's still, if you're journal writing, you're practicing writing. And writing on the internet. And I don't mean, well, I mean, it's Instagram, but I think they have their own language in Instagram. So you want to have them write in full sentences with the spelling there, but there's just different ways to do it. But they need to be able to learn how to write and be able to communicate through their writing. So when you're helping your teen during an assignment, let's suppose they come home from high school or around middle school and say, I've got to write this assignment. There's kind of a before, what to do, and help them before an assignment and after assignment. So, ask how you can help, because they may not think that you can help, but there are certain ways to do it before they start writing, which is to help brainstorm ideas, help them kind of create and clarify and organize their ideas so that they flow and follow. Help them write an outline so that once you write an outline, it's easier to write and get those ideas down on paper. Have them draw from their own experiences, because that's easier to write if you draw from what you know and what you're familiar with. And so you can just get those ideas down on paper. And then maybe after an assignment, work with them to say, okay, now that you've read it, then you point out the strengths of the writing. I mean, you don't want to be just critical, but, if you are critical, do it in a positive way so that they feel that they've done a good job. Help them evaluate the accuracy and relevance of the main idea. Does what they wrote fit with the question or whatever they needed to write? Does it make a lot of sense? Check the organization of the assignment. I have sometimes read and edited, assignments, even in college, for my children. They send them to me, and they're often all over the place. Sometimes I'm like, well, this doesn't flow, this doesn't follow. I'll write a note and say, just fix this, do this. Doesn't make sense, because the organization as you're writing may make sense to them, but to a reader, it doesn't. Encourage your team to read the assignment out loud. And this is something that I think is not often done. And then I teach a college class, and I had some undergrads who might have some poor writing, and I say to them, before you turn in your assignment, read the assignment, read what you've written out loud. And if it doesn't flow like you're talking and it doesn't make sense, then fix it because then it's not going to make sense to the reader. So reading out loud can really show some like, oh, this doesn't really make sense. And as I said, provide lots of positive feedback for the writing. And writing is, like I said, is something overlooked, but it's really, really important because if your student or teen goes into college, then they're going to need it. They go to community college. There's still a lot of, if they go into the workforce, there's still going to be some being able to clearly write your thoughts about what you've read, what you know. It's just being able to do that. So here's a couple of other resources, you know, how I can support my adolescent's development as a writer. How do I engage in partner reading with my child? So are there any questions about writing and writing behaviors and tips? Okay.
I had an idea that had popped up on Pinterest probably for me when my daughter was littler, to encourage writing when she was first learning to write, and it would be the same thing with even at this age.
Yeah.
Is to have a communication notebook at home, you know, where you can just write each other notes in the book and just leave it on a table, or you know, go put it on their bed or something like that after you've written a note, and then they can write you back, and it's just kind of a little unspoken thing, you know, to do back and forth. Another thing that I do, and this is something I keep for myself, is a 5-year journal. And it has 5 years on each page, and it's just a small paragraph, you know, that you write each day, and it just kind of recaps your day or whatever you want to keep.
Yes.
But each day, like when you get down, I'm in year 4 now with this particular journal, and it's my second 5-year journal. So it's kind of exciting because I can look back over the last 3 years that I have when I'm writing for today. I can look back, you know, from the last 3 years. I think this one started in 2021. So, you know, on what I was doing on this day to, you know, last year and 2 years and 3 years ago. It's kind of neat.
I like that idea a lot, especially for an adolescent, as you were speaking, because there's so much change and growth and development and what they're doing, and they're from middle school to high school. And what a great opportunity for them to, as a senior in high school, to look back on what they were doing and how they felt in middle school or as a freshman in high school. So, and nobody, they don't need to necessarily share it, but either way, there's practicing writing and able to put down their thoughts on paper. And I also like the idea of your notes to each other, because sometimes there may be some things that are really hard to talk about in person, and writing it down can be a way to communicate and talk about sometimes that may be difficult issues to speak out loud. So excellent ideas. I really think those are great and things that to think about. All right, so being a media mentor. Oh yeah, the media, that's can be very challenging. I gotta mute my watch. Yeah, that can be very challenging in this day and age because so much is going on and it's so quickly moving along that as I'm aging, I am finding I'm really getting more and more clueless, which is, and I'm not like totally disconnected from you know, technology, but it's still, my kids know so much more. Oh, you don't know that, or the phrasing and things. Anyway, I digress. But you need to be a media mentor by showing and telling them what's online and why, so that they can explain and begin to start to be critical thinkers about what is online and to understand what that information is about. They need to be educated consumers on the internet. And as we know, this is super important because so many things can bring an issue. You know, you check the source of information together, talk about the quality and usefulness of the information. And it's also in terms of privacy as well, which is sometimes I think kids are not really thinking about all the time. I somehow hit the jackpot lottery. Both of my kids have a very small social imprint or footprint, and which just kind of surprises me. You know, they very much kept it to themselves and to their friends, but I know that it can become very easy to just become and start saying too much because it's a protected, you think, oh, I'm alone, nobody knows, but there's just so much disinformation and information can go out there. So you want them to become critical thinkers and check the information about what's going on. And that leads into the whole idea of misinformation versus disinformation. So when you're a media mentor, you know, when they're younger, probably it's a little harder to talk about because, you know, as teenagers get older, they know everything. But maybe when they're younger, help begin talking about how to figure out what is a good source and what isn't a good source, and having them understand what is misinformation versus disinformation. So misinformation is information that is false information that is posted, shared, or passed along online with no malicious intent. It's just passed along, you know, you're sharing a photo, sharing information. It could be misinformation, but you're still not doing it with a negative intent. The disinformation takes that one step further from misinformation. So it's often misleading, false, and posted for a gain of some kind. And this could be just the whole, you know, saying, bullying, doing things that are saying something about one another. And it's best to stay as disconnected from that as possible and to understand what you're looking at. So when you want to figure out the information, here are some questions to go over. You know, who is the author of this? Who is the target audience that they're aiming at? You know, where is the source of information from? Do the authors have qualifications? And, you know, what's the motivation? Is the website or URL legitimate? And sometimes when I'm looking up information, I look at the website and go, well, I don't know if that would be something, I don't know if it's true or not true, and following that information. And sometimes we can go down a rabbit hole of listening and looking at disinformation, thinking it's true. So it's important for teenagers to, know what's going on and understand it. So we're going to watch a brief video about, does your teen have the skills needed to research a topic? And this can be for college, researching a topic, but I also think it's researching, a topic and understanding how to pick up the information. So let me go to that. All right. And I will enlarge it. Okay, here we go. All right.
Hey man, what's up? What are you doing?
I'm researching my cars right now, and I believe our next family car should be the Tesla Model S.
A Tesla? Yeah, right. Why?
Well, you see, according to safercar.gov, which is a government-based site, it has a 5-star rating on safety, and out of all the cars in this class, it has the most cargo space. I mean, imagine how many groceries you could fit.
All right, that's actually pretty decent research. How'd you learn how to do something like that?
By this time, your high schooler may or may not be researching the next family car, but they should be pretty comfortable doing research on their own to learn about a new topic. It's a skill that will serve them well in life. Learning starts with a topic and a question.
Could you read that research question?
Does sex trafficking exist in the United States today? I think what makes a good research question is that it's debatable, but it's not too narrow and it's not too broad.
Next, they look for sources, deciding between good sources and bad sources.
First, I'd look at the URL and then I'd look at the author.
2 big things to look for in a source. Is it reliable, such as a university or major news organization? And is it relevant? This is where you can help.
Ask them. What are you looking for? What's your research question? Why did you click on this link and not on other links? And the student should have an answer for that.
And of course, the big internet age question. Can you use Wikipedia?
You could still use Wikipedia as a reliable source, but you're not going to want to use the information that is said in it because users have the ability to change it. So what you can do is find what you need, and there will be a number next to some information, and it'll take you to what source they cited.
As kids read through all the different information and perspectives they've collected, they should be developing a deeper understanding of the topic.
each of the sources I used, they all had a different take on sex trafficking. It was more helpful for me to get different perspectives on it.
And ultimately, kids can take their new body of knowledge and create something with it.
The final product was a video. I learned that the runaway youth are more prone to being involved in sex trafficking, that pretty much anyone could be a victim of sex trafficking.
So is your high schooler a research whiz? By the end of high school, students should be comfortable choosing a topic that answers a question or solves a problem, identifying multiple reliable sources, and using all the information to develop a deeper understanding of the topic.
All right. Let me stop sharing. Get my. All right. Okay. So, I mean, that just shows, you know, being able to research a topic is super important. Oops, my bad. I scrolled ahead. Yeah, as being super important, being able to research a topic, you know, just in life and if you go to college, but it's a skill that as the social media and, you know, the internet is there, we need to be able to be critical thinkers and really be able to decipher this stuff. Okay, so motivating your child to read. So this is this can be tough as kids get older because they are less likely to want to read. They want to be on their phone. They don't want to be engaging in all of that. But it's, if you know, it's important to figure out ways to help them learn to read, that reading is not just school, but it's reading for fun, and for them to understand that they both are important, but reading for fun is kind of extra, and you can get into stories, or you can get into biographies, you can learn about a lot of different things. Other ways to read, though it's not, you know, visual, but listen to podcasts and audiobooks in the car, listen to them at night together. You know, just there's lots of information out there, lots of really interesting podcasts where they can learn about things. And as we spoke about earlier, try comics, graphic novels, or series. You know, it's important to be able to, you know, understand that there's a huge genre out there of different types of reading. Let's see. Yeah, so we're gonna watch another video. This is my final video. So one more, sharing what promotes the love of reading, which is important. Make it big. Here we go. Oh, I guess I got to start it. Thought it was started on its own like the others did.
Welcome to this segment of our Raising Readers series, promoting a love of reading for teens. In this segment, I will be sharing some easy and effective ways that you can promote a joy of reading so that even your teens become lifelong readers. Students in middle and high school are often very busy with homework, after-school activities, sports, friends, and other responsibilities, so they tend to read less than when they were younger. Therefore, it is very important for parents to encourage their teens to build a love of reading. It is never too late. Reading takes many forms. If your teens are more interested in reading online or reading magazines, graphic novels, or video game manuals, take heart, they are still reading. Praise your teens for reading. Provide access to the types of things they like to read, and encourage them to expand their reading interests. Teens are very social, and taking group outings as a family or with friends to the bookstore or library will connect that social interest to reading. Many bookstores and libraries have special events for teens, such as book clubs, poetry slams, or author presentations. In addition, teens enjoy hanging out in the bookstore cafe with their friends, reading and discussing books and magazines. Many popular book series for teens have been made into movies, such as Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, and Twilight. Encourage your teen to read the book first and then to view the movie to consider which they liked better, as well as how the book and movie versions differed. Teens love their smartphones, and there are many free reading apps available, such as Word of the Day, Dictionary.com, Words with Friends, Scrabble, eBooks, and Goodreads, which is a social networking site for book reviews and recommendations. Many teens spend a great deal of time playing video games. Encourage your family to play word games together, such as My Word Coach and Word Jong Party, Puzzler Collection, and Puzzle Challenge for the Wii video game system. Teens are often interested in current events, sports news, and entertainment news. Make newspapers, either print or electronic, available to your teen to read about these interests. Some popular topics addressed in teen magazines include entertainment, fashion, sports, and video gaming. Consider giving your teen a subscription to a favorite magazine as a gift. Don't nag your teens about reading, because doing so will make reading a negative experience for them. Stay positive and keep looking for interesting, appealing materials and opportunities for your teens to read. If you would like more information about what you can do at home to support your teen's reading development, please visit the Northern Illinois University Literacy Clinic website.
Okay. All right. Let me see. Yeah, that video was a little bit dated, but it still gives the gist of what we're talking about is motivation to read. So it was good. I mean, it just kind of gives some great ideas. Okay, so we're winding down to the end. I mean, we're talking about, 4 ways to support your child's literacy development. And, these are, the same 4 that we've had on each 3 sessions. Note which sounds, letters, words, or ideas seem hard for your child and what it sounds like when reading. Watch for skills or tasks that appear difficult for your child, see if they improve with practice. And I would say even as your child is getting into adolescence, and if they're really struggling with reading out loud, they're struggling remembering, comprehending reading passages, then it might be, some red flags that say, maybe we should see if there's some reading challenges going on. So that's important to kind of also look out for. Pause, give your child a chance to correct a mistake, give a hint or to figure it out. And then talk with your child about the book or activity. And this is something that we've reiterated over and over, allow praise, successful, reassure them when difficulties arise. But it's just, you need just support, should be there from preschool through adolescence for sure. So that is it. Are there any questions? I'm going to go to the next slide. This is, supporting a child's literacy development at home. It's an infographic on the NCIL website, which can give some talks about the 3 trainings that I have done.
Now's your chance, folks. Ask your questions or make a comment. If you have an idea of things that have worked for your child, especially transfers for a child with a disability, how you can motivate. I think there's certainly carryover with all this information and ways that we can motivate our kids to read and activities we can give them to do. But is there anything in particular that has worked for your child who may have an intellectual disability or a learning disability, even dyslexia or something like that? All right, I'm going to drop the link into the chat box. This is the link for NCIL to have for you guys to give them some feedback on Dr. McLean's presentation. We did have a comment, reading a restaurant menu is always fun. Of course, Wallace.
Yes. There can be some complicated words on that too.
That's true. But
I'm-
sometimes some restaurants get very creative with how they,
Yes,
how they
yes.
write their descriptions of different dishes. So that's true. Most of this information seems to be for adolescents that read well. The families I work with have adolescents that are close to non-readers.
Yeah, I mean, that is true. I mean, it's a lot of adolescents that read well, but I think some of the tips and ideas can be, could be basic, and you don't have to assume that they have a lot of information. It can be, reading with your child in conversations goes whether you read well or you don't, because that can only help with the vocabulary development. Reading passages where, you help them with comprehension. And again, if, they're not reading well, then that, there could be a disability, but it's still the encouragement and the praise and, what different types of writing. Then you just do different, more basic types of writing than complicated journal writing or something. It can be, writing a short letter or an email to someone. So it can, I think and it's perhaps more support from the parent. So I think yes, I agree, but it's also can be used for both types, for an adolescent that reads well or does not.
And some of the tips that were more multimedia, could be better for children who don't read well, because it's something that you may do with them, combing the internet for information, and maybe take turns reading with them.
Yeah.
That kind of thing, if you're looking up information for something in particular. Cynthia says setting up an area in the home that's age appropriate to meet the child's literacy needs may help encourage reading. Yeah, a nice little reading nook.
Yeah.
If you have an adolescent who spends 95% of their time in their room, making sure that they have a comfortable place to read or to lay out, and that's not difficult to do. We created a reading nook in my daughter's room that she never used. Thank you. We just got a cheap little $10 canopy and suspended it from the ceiling. It was really cute, and we used like a chair that we already had, but you can use a big pillow even, to put in that. And then somebody gave us some cheap little LED lights, that we just hung up in the canopy, and it made a beautiful little area. I would have loved that as a kid. Her, not so much. Yeah, she used it, the first couple of days, and that was it. But that's a good idea. Find books in their interest to read. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think this can be tricky too, because they may not be able to say what they're interested in reading. And I feel like even, I've been reading my entire life, and I feel like within the last 10 to 15 years, I've really, narrowed down my genre of what I like to read. So I think it's too, finding out their interests, but exposure to different kinds of stories, mysteries, whatever, and that will help them define what their interests are. I think we don't want to assume, oh, I like this and that's that, but I think they need the guidance to figure that out as well. And that could be, go to the library often, do different things, but I think that is also they need support with that.
My son read the pictures and thought he was reading. It was a start.
It's definitely a start.
Yeah.
And there are something called wordless picture books, which are more for preschoolers, but they can also be for if your adolescents are non-readers, but they're still talking about it and creating a story and ideas like that. So it is like reading the pictures, but it's really a good start. And it can go in so many different directions with creativity and everything. So yes, love that.
And don't get too hung up either on the age, because some of the tips that we covered in preschool, in the preschool training that Dr. McLean did, could definitely go for non-readers or minimal readers as they age,
Yes.
And, talking, and I know some of us have children who are not speakers. So like my son is not a speaker. I think he reads more than we give him credit for, but not actively. We don't actively, he doesn't sit there and read books, he's not that kind of guy. But but forgot where I was going with that idea. A lot of the things that we covered, in the early trainings can certainly go for older, older students. Great information. We appreciate your time. Well, I thank everyone for joining us. I did drop the link for the National Center on Improving Literacy, NCIL. I dropped that link for their little survey.
Thank you.
Please give them some feedback on that link. I'm going to go ahead also and put the link for our FHF survey. In case you are here and need a certificate of attendance, then you can complete this one and I'll send that to you. I know it's a lot, but when we have some of our national technical assistance centers, our TA centers, when they do things like this for us, then they have a survey that they have to complete, and we of course honor that. So
I appreciate your completing.
And Dr. McLean, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
I've really enjoyed these so much. So thank you for coming. And like I told you before we were on camera, if you ever want to come back and talk to us about something else,
thank you.
Let me know.
All righty. Yes, thank you. It's been a pleasure talking about the 3 different topic areas, 3 age levels. So I hope it has been helpful.
All of these also I have recorded, and they are linked on our website under recorded trainings. So if you want to go back or either review them yourself or share them with a friend, they're linked on our website, fhfofgno.org. All right. Thanks, everyone. Hope to see you again soon.